All right. Welcome to the Scorched Earth Political Podcast. I am John, and let me just warn you, this is going to be the worst podcast of all time. You know, I am the luckiest guy in the world, and my parents have been here, obviously, every day of my life. And 2 hours ago, I lost my dad. And I'm filled with a lot of emotions, obviously. First of all, I know most people who are watching this, and honestly, I wouldn't recommend watching it. But most people watching or in the audience have lost a parent, have lost two parents, lost children, and my dad passed away at 86. And he lived a great life. But I miss him. They just took him out an hour ago, and they wrapped him. He was a Korean War vet. He was born in 1939. He lived 86 glorious years. And he was my friend. And, you know, a lot of my podcasts are built on rage, built on anger. And I usually always have a word. I always usually have a phrase to get me through moments. And right now I feel like an empty vessel. Inept, pathetic. I was glad my dad went. He was in pain for a long time. He had Alzheimer's. He lived a robust life. Alzheimer's is an insidious disease. It robs you of you. There's a lot of insidious diseases. I'm not going to make anything political here. I'm not going to talk about cutting funding and how it affects people with cancer or anything. This isn't the moment for it. But if you have somebody that you love who has Alzheimer's, so my dad was born, he lived, he existed, and he just died. And I still have my mom, which I am amazingly grateful for. And we had a tough day, obviously. But I want to talk about my dad. I was lucky. I had a really good dad. He treated me well. He gave me respect. He taught me a lot of things that made me into the guy I am today. A lot of people may say that's not actually a good thing, but I'll take the wins where I can get them. I remember when I was growing up. He came out of the Depression. He came out of an era where emotional vulnerability was not accepted. He always taught me not to bring shame to the family, and I kind of adhered to that. You know, in friendships, relationships, I was always so closed off. I'm not saying I'm better now. I'm definitely a work in progress. But he always said to me, I'm your father, I'm not your friend. And I took that, his rule, his world. And I worked with him. I was going to go to college, I was going to be a lawyer. He had a company, he had a construction company. I went into it. I worked there. I met some amazing people: Stephen, Joe, Pete, Ray, just assortment, just really good guys, blue collar guys. And, I kind of started to run a little section of the company, and we would always butt heads. We would always butt heads. Two alpha males in the room. And the answer to every question was always, this is my company, it's my money, we're going to do what I want. Okay. And then I took off to Kentucky and I tried to start my own thing, but I missed California. I know, right? I missed California and I missed my family. And I remember there was this job, and I remember the night before putting on the bid and realizing if I got the job, I was never coming back to California. And I was in a relationship at the time, and I went into the other room and said, we're going back to California. I didn't put the bid in, went back to California and, made my own path. I got back into the company, the same issues came back and forth. And, you know, he was doing things his way. And I didn't really understand that. As you get older, you start to understand a little more of what your parents were thinking. It's like I say, the older I get, the smarter he got. I remember in my 20s, I was arrogant, full of piss and vinegar, and I thought I knew everything. Humility is a tough thing. Humbleness is a tough thing. And he did a lot. He started a company in the recession. He was incredibly successful. He got into politics. He met Gerald Ford. And that's back before it became the money grubbing thing politics evolved into. He was very passionate about his church, the Catholic Church. I grew away from the Catholic Church, but he was a true believer. He was a born again Catholic. He brought a lot of happiness to a lot of people. And, I'm going to tell a couple little stories. I don't know where this is going to go. I don't even know if there's anybody even watching. I don't drink, but tonight, my dad always liked wine. I'm going to salute him. And I remember he used to take us all down. We all would meet at the warehouse to load up, and he was always on a tight schedule. He always had something going. He's a guy who didn't know how to read and write, went into Korea, came out, self-taught himself how to read and write. And when he ran his company, he literally was like a lawyer. He'd go through every contract. He'd go through 40 pages of contracts. He would talk to lawyers. He was like a barrister. He was just so relentless. He was so driven. And I remember I was home. I was working in the summer for him. And I was 18, living at home. And I had one of those days. I was in downtown LA, and it was just a bad day. We all have had those bad days at work. And I drove home in traffic, took 2 hours. I was dirty. I was miserable. I was angry. And I got home and I went out to the backyard, and he's in the pool. He's got a drink. He's in his Bacalanger, floating in the pool. He's got his sunglasses on. And I told him my day. I was expecting some empathy. I was expecting some sympathy. Of course, he had been through those days a million times, but I wasn't there, so I didn't know it. And after I got done with telling him about how horrendous my day was, he looked at me and said, "Wow, you're just not tough like me." Took a sip of his drink and swam off in the pool. Obviously, 40 years later, it's still stuck with me. And, when we were in the warehouse in the morning loading up, he would always say, "Hurry up, a-holes. Hurry up. I got to get to church." Because church, he didn't miss that. He had a family there. He's just a family of fellow Catholics. Let me be very clear about that. And the irony of it was, one of my truly great friends, Scott, his son, over a decade ago, called me and asked me if I would officiate his wedding. And I was like, "Whoa, me?" And he said, "Yeah, you." And I went through all the licensing. It literally took 10 minutes. And, you go to Universal Life Church and you can marry somebody. And my dad, being the fervent Catholic, he wanted to give ministry, Eucharistic ministry, to shut-ins, people who couldn't get out of their house but still wanted the body and blood of Christ. And the Catholics, God bless them, they'll take anything simple and make it into a mountain. And he went to classes for 6 months. I mean, I'm talking 3 hours twice a week, right? I mean, this guy could have become a surgeon in less time. And, he did that. He did that for 10 years. And, it was cool. He would spend his weekends doing that. A couple hours every Saturday, a couple hours every Sunday. And when I became a certified online ordained minister, I told him, I said, "Hey, Dad, I'm the guy now." And he's like, "Yeah, you're just an online guy." And it was truly one of the blessings of my life, because even though Alzheimer's robbed him of a lot of things, he always remembered the online minister. And when I would tell him that, it would, guys always go at each other. They're rough and tumble. And they're always trying to find, soft flesh. And I definitely was that guy. So was he. It was cool. And even in the years where he didn't have the ability to communicate, when I would bring up the minister, he'd always start firing off. "Oh, you're just online. You're not real. You're not a Catholic." I cherish those moments now. I looked forward to egging him on, and I'm glad I had those moments. When he got Alzheimer's, he he became a lot sweeter. He became a lot more tender. He wasn't talking, but he was just always so sweet with my mom. And my mom was so sweet with him. And they were married 67 years. And I benefited from that love and from that union and from that marriage. And I'll be eternally grateful. And if anybody out there is still listening, which I wouldn't recommend, there was a moment in my life where me and my dad had a severe falling out. And it was very bad. It was so bad for 5 years, I would only see him once or twice a year. Contrast that to today, where I haven't worked in 19 months. I have made the hour drive to his house every day just to see him and see my mom. And it's been such a privilege and such an honor, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. And we had the falling out, and he was 99% wrong. Not going to get into all the details, they don't matter. But even to this day, I know he was 99% wrong what he did. And it was he put me in a real sticky wicket. And I was able to extricate myself from the situation that I felt he put me in. He didn't. And about 6 months later, a mutual friend of ours died. And we were in the Catholic Church. Now, I grew up Catholic. He's a fervent Catholic. I grew away from it because of the abuse scandal, but I respect the religion. I respect the people in that institution, except for the priest and the people who covered up for the pedophiles. And I remember looking over, and I don't believe in intervention. I don't believe in divinity coming down, but maybe it did happen to me. And I looked over at the other side of the church and I saw him. He was in the back. And something came to me, and it was, he did me wrong. But you know what? He literally did a million cool things for me in my life. I'm sure there was a million times where I was a smartass, where I mouthed off, where I embarrassed him in front of family, friends, and he never said a word. He took it, and he still loved me. He didn't take me home and beat the crap out of me, which probably I deserved. No, you know what he did? He just loved me in his way. He wasn't affectionate, but, his thing was, I'm going to raise you to be the right guy. My mom was the affectionate one. And it worked well. And I remember seeing him back there and looking at him and saying, God, he did a million cool things. And after the service was over, he ran out the back. And I ran after him. And I kept calling his name. And he wouldn't turn around. And finally, I caught up to him. And I told him, Dad, I love you. And I hugged him. And from that moment, I don't care what he said, or what he did, or how he acted. I was just going to love him till the day I died. And the day he died. And that day was today. And what you're looking at in the back there was the remnants of his final days. And a couple years ago, when he was in the midst of Alzheimer's, he would have clarion moments, far and few between, but he would have them. Trying not to cry here. And he was looking out the window as we were driving home. And he said, I was in politics. I ran companies successfully. I owned companies. I had crews. I took care of my guys. He goes, I did a lot of really cool things. And he goes, now I can't even tie my shoes. The world's a humbling place. And for anybody out there, and I'm not telling you what to do. Believe me, I'm the last life coach you'd ever need. You got a family member that you are on the outs with. Think about the totality of it all. And one day you're going to be like me and look back at an empty bed. And, he was okay physically until about a month ago, and then he went to the hospital, and we had ordeals there, and he made it out, and his wish was always to die at home. And that's what he did tonight. And I'm in the home that he lived in for 53 years till 2 hours ago. He loved my mom. They were married 67 years. You know, when he went into the hospital, I drove my mom home to this place, and we got out of the hospital at 12, and she was happy he was okay, but she was kind of real tired. And she goes, we were driving home, and she said, you know, this is the first time in 67 years I haven't slept next to him. Wow. Wow. Tonight, she's alone again. And I don't know if any of this makes sense, but I felt I had to do it. Maybe for my own sanity. But I'm going to go through a couple of real quick pictures. This is my mom and dad. And we used to go to Vegas all the time. And I remember seeing the love sign at the Mirage when it existed. And I tried 3 or 4 times we went to the Outback back across the street, and I wanted to get a picture of them kissing underneath. And I did. Here's a picture of my mom and dad. Finally, one of the happiest pictures. We would always take a picture before we left Vegas. I know, who's that good looking dude over there, right? Who's this guy? You know, thank you, Dad. You know, I can proudly say at the end of your life, you went full circle and you were my friend. Last thing we took off him, the wedding ring he wore every day for 67 years. 67 years. You know, everybody says it, but if you have somebody you love, appreciate the moment, appreciate the beauty, and understand the depth. I know I was pathetic here, but I just miss him. And I'm glad he's in a better place because he was in a lot of pain. And maybe 100 years from now, some kid will be going through the internet, will be going through whatever mechanization of technology that we have then, and he'll see this video. And he'll see that there was a man named John who raised a family, who was married 67 years, and did a lot of incredible things. And his efforts were not for naught. I love you, Dad. And thank you for everything you gave me. The other thing we took off were his glasses. I'll see you in the next place, Dad. Hopefully it won't be too soon, but if it is, you and I'll have a glass of wine. And I'll thank you for being my father. And I'll thank you for being my friend. I love you, Dad. That's all today from the Scorched Earth.